During this quiz, you will do simple linear regression analysis using Microsoft Excel. Let's go to Microsoft Excel. So here's Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And this is an example that is very familiar for all of us. We have discussed this example in class. The explanatory variable is hydrocarbon level. That's a variable X. And the response variable is oxygen purity. That's a variable Y. Now we are going to see how to draw a scatter plot between these two variables. To draw the scatter plot, you will have to first select the entire data set. When I say entire data set, it should only include the variables X and Y. So to do that, I will first move my cursor to the cell V4. That's the variable label for variable X. And then with that, I will press Shift and right arrow key. That will select both B4 and C4 cells. Those are the variable labels for the variable X and variable Y respectively. And then underneath those two variable labels, I have the data sets. So with these two variable labels, I'm going to press Shift, Control, and down arrow key so that the entire data set is now selected. After selecting the data set, you simply have to go to Insert right here. Click that, move your cursor to Charts, click that, and select the very first one, Scatter Plot. Now this is a chart between, or the scatter plot between the hydrocarbon level, which is our X variable, and the oxygen purity, which is our Y variable. And if you need to do any changes, like adding access labels and so on, you can move your cursor to the plus sign right here and do all these things. As of now, I don't want to do all that. Instead, I would like to add the trend line because I would like to see the equation. So to do that, move your cursor to this plus sign, click that, and select the very last one, check this box, trend line. And then you can see this little arrow, click on that, and select more options. Here we can select more options as necessary. Of course, the default trend line is linear. There's no change under that section, but scroll down, and then you will see these last two things. Display equation on chart. I need that, so I'll check this box. I would also like to have R squared value on chart. Therefore, I will check this box as well. That's basically all I need. And then I will close this part of this window. And I can see the graph right here with all those pieces. If you move your cursor right here and click that, and then you can drag it to somewhere else on the graph itself so that we can see the equation and R squared more clearly. So the equation is Y equals 14.947x plus 74.283. R squared value is given as 0.8774, and we need to write it as a percentage. So as a percentage, this is 87.74%. If I need to calculate the correlation, how do I do that? To calculate the correlation, you can use the function correl. Let's say I would like to have my correlation calculated for this cell, F2. I need to find a function which indicates that we are calculating a correlation. It'll be very easy. Just move your cursor to FX, click on that, change the category to statistical, and then scroll down until you see something for correlation. Of course, there's this function, correl. That's a function that should be used to calculate the correlation between two variables. So select that function and then click on OK. We can enter the two arrays. So click on this little arrow for the first array and select the first data point. Please do not include the variable labels in this function. Select the first label for variable X, and then with that Shift Control down arrow key, that selected the entire data set for X. And then hit Enter. Similarly, I need to define the second array. Click on this little arrow, select the first data point, Shift Control down arrow key. That selected the entire data set for the variable Y. Hit Enter. Well, that's basically all we need to enter, and then click on OK. So we can see that the correlation is 0.936715. Similarly, we can also do the calculations for residuals. Residuals can be calculated using various ways. One way to calculate the residuals is to use the equation. So we already have the equation 14.947x plus 74.283. So using that, I can calculate the estimated y values. And then I can obtain the difference between the observed y values and the estimated y values. Those are the residuals. That's one way to do it. So if I need to calculate the residuals as that, I will first need to calculate the estimated y values. So let's say this is the estimated y values, or y hat values. Now I'm going to calculate the estimated y values for the column E. I will first calculate the estimated y value for the first observed x. I will start with the equal sign, 14.947 times the x value. The x value can be found in the cell B5 for the first observation. That plus 74.283. That's the intercept. And that's basically all I need to enter for the calculation of the estimated y value for the first observation. So hit enter. So the estimated y value for the first observation is 89.08053. I would like to apply this formula for all of these x values. So move your cursor to the right bottom corner and left click and drag. That will automatically apply this equation similarly to all the other x values. Now we can calculate the residuals. So the residuals are defined as y minus y hat. Either way is fine. You can define them as y hat minus y as well. But we just have to be consistent on that definition for all the data points we have. So let me define this as y minus y hat. So start with the equal sign. The y value for the first observation is C5. I selected the cell C5 minus the y hat value can be found in the cell E5. I selected the cell E5. I simply used the arrow keys when selecting those cells. So the equation for residuals was written using a cell reference, hit enter. So this is the first residual. Similarly, you can calculate all the other residuals, but we are not going to do it one by one. We can move your cursor to the right bottom corner here, left click and drag. That is one way to do it. Or you can move your cursor to the right bottom corner and simply double click. That will apply that same formula for all these cells. So under this column, I can see the set of residuals for this example. So this calculation of the residuals is somewhat lengthy, and Microsoft Excel has a fast shortcut to calculate all the residuals. For that, you will need the data analysis tool pack. Remember, the data analysis tool pack should be separately imported. And if you have not yet imported the data analysis tool pack, then you will have to go to options and import it. And there's a separate video explaining all the steps necessary to import the data analysis tool pack. Please go ahead and watch that video and import the data analysis tool pack. Okay, so if you have already imported the data analysis tool pack, then the life is easy. Just go to data, select data analysis, and then if you scroll down, you will see regression right here. Select that function, click on OK, and then you need to define the y values and the x values. So for the first field, I need to input y range. It's a bit weird. Usually, in many other software, we first enter the x values and then enter the y values. But for this specific dialog box, remember, you first enter the y values. If you interchange those two, your answers are going to be completely incorrect. Okay, so let me go ahead and click on this little arrow. Remember, I'm going to define the y values. So the first y value can be found here. For this function, once again, if necessary, the variable labels can be included. So I will include the variable label right here. And with that, I will press Shift Control down arrow key, all three at once, so that the entire data set is now selected for the variable y. Hit Enter, and then input X range. Move your cursor to this little arrow, click that. I can select the variable label for variable X, Shift Control down arrow key. That now selected all the data points under the variable X. We can simply hit Enter. Since the variable labels were included in our selection, I need to check this box. Well, these two parts are not necessary at this point. Constant is 0 and confidence level. They are not necessary at this point, but we will use them in the future. Output options, I'm going to check this little circle, output range, because I would like to have my output on this spreadsheet itself rather than going to a new spreadsheet. So I'm going to check this little circle, output range. Click on this little arrow and simply select a cell outside of the data range. So I will select a cell somewhere here. So that's where my output will be appeared. And then move your cursor back to this little arrow or simply hit Enter. And then you have to indicate that we need the residuals. So check this box, residuals. Then only MS Excel will calculate the residuals for us. We would also like to have residual plots. So I'm going to go ahead and check this box, residual plots. And the other two, I of course don't want. And the normal probability plots, that's also not necessary for our class. So this is basically all we need to enter. Please once again note that I have checked these two boxes under residuals. Residuals was checked and residual plots was also checked. Okay, that's basically all I need. I will click on OK. Now we have some tables, but these tables are not necessary at this point. So just ignore them and simply move on to residuals. The residuals can be found right here. So those residuals are the same residuals that we calculated right here as well. So that's a fast shortcut for the calculation of residuals. And sometimes we will also need to draw a histogram for the residuals. If I need to draw a histogram for the residuals, there are two ways that we can draw histograms. One way was explained during the first quiz, and the second way of drawing a more customized histogram was explained during the third quiz. So you can go back and watch those quiz videos if you would like to get a refresher on how to draw those default histograms or customized histograms respectively. But there will be a question from customized histogram for your quiz. All right, so that's it about quiz number 4. Thanks.